So today we're going to finish the last couple bits of the story. I was trying to see if I could find what I was missing for part of it because I still haven't finished one thing. And then I'm just going to give my final thoughts because that's fun. I made a list, but it's this one. So justice, common root, bad ending 2, I don't know, or 3? Let's see. Because I tried looking at common roots online and I'm not seeing it mention it. So, marriage and paradox. But I haven't looked it up specifically, so. Common root. Yeah, it goes straight to grand finale, which I'm not talking about. Let's see. All right. Justice comment. Oops, my apologies. I didn't put justice. Okay, I might finally have it. I might have the answer now. Maybe? I still don't. Okay, so instead of that for right this moment, we're going to go common root. Is this really not? Show it to me because this feels like it's the right one. I love the idea that you get to choose if you just want to have a bad ending. That's what grand finale really is. Yeah, let's start from here. Ro's an enemy, but leaving Ro. We died. It's just so quick. Received visual confirmation that the outsiders, machines, and soldiers had gathered in mass. The outsiders had came for us. We were instantly overwhelmed and then annihilated. Yay! That's what the bad ending's like. Okay, so flowchart. 99%. I just need that one last bad ending. And I just don't understand how I'm supposed to get it. Ibuki's luck will at least 3 roots. That's fine. That's the grand finale. See, this is what's confusing. So when I look it up, because it's justice, common, root. Bad 2. Let's just try bad 3. It just mentions the grand finale. Am I the one actually enjoying this game? I love it. Okay. All right, let's see. Doing nothing dies here. Ask Kaori for help. We're gonna go with that one. All right. Just in case, we're gonna save right here. Because this is basically the area, right? Not load. Flowchart. Be sure to use your flowchart. Okay, so we're still 1-1, but we're gonna go here. We're gonna do this down the list. We're gonna start at the chem lab. At Tokyo. Speaking of, I did see Tokyo. All right. Flowchart. Because this is where it gets confusing. The only option here is this is the only option here. Am I wrong? Okay. We're gonna save. We're gonna keep doing top first. So save one more time. And this one's going to be stop the argument. And then we're going to go to the next choice. Save one more time. No, we're on Tokyo Story now. Literally no. Okay, so we're going to go back to this one. I misspoke. We're going to load back up because we're doing this one at a time. So we're going to load into this one. So we stopped the argument. Now we're going to declare we're going to lead. Let's see if that gets us a different answer. Something different happened. Don't be absurd. Have you lost your mind? Maybe. I don't know anymore. Tears filled my eyes and no one seemed to have any other objections. Is she gonna die this way? Oh, she dies. From that on, I took the lead in the war. Something inside me just snapped. I didn't feel anymore. I'll save all of them today, too. This is for everyone in the colony. The termination is the only thing I have left keeping me going. Okay. All right, I think that's it. I think that's all the flowcharts. 100%. Okay. So I guess it's Tokyo. You have to be Tokyo based in that choice order, which is great. That's fine. But I'm sure I've said I'll lead the fight before. Okay. So now activity reports. I know there's something else we have to open because we still have one photo that is locked in everybody's story. And I don't know if that is related to the reports or not. But we'll check and see. Top secret investigation, void. Fragment of the future. Not long after the battle. Are you still working on that gun? Sure I am. I have to keep at it. It's all I got to fight with, you know. Use psychokinesis, don't you? Why do you need to use a weapon? Does it work? You want to look at it? Just ask. Oh, that's cute. Okay. We're gonna fast forward. This is fine. Unfortunately, once I get past the main story, the side stuff's just there. Okay, so that did nothing. Is it the void? Let me just make sure I'm not silly. Do I hit start? Oh, no, 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 no. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy. Okay, after ending. Paradox. Final. Uh, 500 years in the future. I don't think I remember that. Rate her character. Okay. Wait, I could be wrong. That's fair. That's fair. All right, maybe we have to play all the videos to get that last picture. I could be wrong. It'd be like, here, all your information's gone. Start over. What is this? Let's see. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe it's only the void ones. Let's try. We'll try that and see if anything happens. Top secret. We're going to interview Tokyo. Tokyo, tell me about yourself. I was born in the research lab. My parents didn't like me that much, but they liked me more than Yume's parents, so, you know. Oh, that's cute. Okay. I guess I should read these.
インタビューはこれで終わり。この
By the
会話
way,
ってボイスレコーダー調
what are you
査
gonna
書を
do?
まとめるのに使うだけか。
Not gonna let anyone listen?
結構
I think I said
うっかりあの
embarrassing
子のこ
stuff.
ととか話しそうになっちゃったし。
I also almost
俺
mentioned
がいろん
her.
なことを乗り越えて。
Oh, okay. It was all thanks to her. I like her. It's still recording? Turn it off. Delete it. Oh, I hit the button too fast. That was cute.
これでインタビューは終わりですよ。
That concludes the interview.
まだカバンがある。姿は見えないけど。
After this bag, I don't see her. She's going to be here soon. Maybe I should just leave.
けど待ち合わせはいつも
Promise to meet.
送信完了。彼女にメールしただけで。
Glad no one saw
い
me.
や、両
Madly in love. I should probably get going. Oh, theirs is the cutest so far. Okay. I guess I regret not putting the jacket back on. I was really warm last night, so I didn't want to, but I had looked just like this. All right.
インタビューはこれで終わり。
I don't care about them proclaiming love. Oh, that's cute. Okay. Ibuki. Oh, you know what? We're gonna listen to
最近は
Ibuki.
特に
Hey, so I know I said earlier that I didn't matter which form I was in, but it's different when I'm with her. I always want to be like this when she's around. That's what I've been thinking recently. There are things I can't do when I'm Moravia.
例えば話さなくていい？どうして？
For example, I don't need to say anymore. Why?
何を想像したのか知らないけど、別に変なことじゃないよ。
I have no idea what you're imagining, but it's nothing
モラビ
weird.
アはあの子と身長が同じくらいなんだ。だから目線が同じになっちゃうんだよ。
Moravia is about the same height as her, so we're always at the same eye
でも
level.
僕は彼女が僕を見上げてくるのが好きなんだ。特
I
に
like when she looks up at me, especially when I hug her. You
結
think
局
that's weird?
僕と彼女はお互いを大事な存在だと思っている
We
し、
care about each other. Hugging's very normal. I get it. You're jealous. Just kidding.
君が僕に焼き餅を焼いたとしても、
I'm never gonna give her up. Alright.
僕
She's precious
も
to
し
me.
かして
Are you still recording?
じゃあさ、今のところをあの子にも聞かせてあげてよ。
Make sure she listens to
そ
the
うい
last
う
part.
道具じゃない。
You're not using
自
it for
分
that.
の口で言え。
It's no fun. Oh, they're resting with kaiju. And she looks more like this. Perfect. Oh, I'm right in brand. Oh, that's adorbs. Okay. Rose. Is this supposed to be after the grand finale, or is this supposed to be after their story? Because if it's after the grand finale, that's weird. Hyuga's.
話はもうい
You're
いだろ
done.
う。焦ってるように。
I look panicked as if.
もうすぐ出かけるんだよ。
Yeah, I just came to
I
town to check in. Okay, so they are still doing their thing. You're recording. Hey. That's cute. Oh no, Yuganami.
これでどっちかが病気
When you might get
だから
sick.
さ、こういうので僕の
My voice can be around. She won't be lonely. Yuganami. That's a good photo. That one's good. I don't like Yuganami, but that's a cute picture. Okay, is that all of them? Did we do it? Did we find it out? I was in the right spot the whole time.
いら
Alright, all the photos have been unlocked. So we didn't give this one a chance. I believe it's because in their story they never confess that they like each other. Okay. So, I have listed my final thoughts on this game. And I beat that stuff a little bit faster than I thought, so this might be a pretty short video. Woohoo! I thought it might unlock something bigger. So, I broke this up into 4 things. I'm gonna probably switch between the cam and just showing them because I don't know. So I wrote this down into the good, the bad, what I like and what I don't like. Those are different in my mind. So the good, the unique story was interesting. I liked the setting of this story. I like dystopian stuff. They made it kind of interesting with things like this. Like, what a lovely backdrop. How interesting. The other thing I thought was good was the pretty girl transformation. So having them like transform into girls when they're guys, it's a unique take on it. I did enjoy them trying something a little different. It did lead to me to confusion because initially when I saw this game, because I don't like to see too much information, I hadn't correlated the girls with the guys and thought this was gonna have girl options and guy options, so I was a little disappointed. I had one moment where I was really excited where I thought they were going to show like the girls kissing. He transformed back to a boy, so that was a little disappointing for me, but I did love that. The bad, there was a lot of bad advice in this game. Uncle Yukonami gave some of the worst advice ever. She had just went through a traumatic experience and he basically told her to chase somebody. Just go find someone, and I just could not get behind that. That's not a good time to be looking for somebody. She felt utterly alone, and I understand that, but he should have advised her to go talk to someone that's like she can confide in, not someone that has same feelings as her. That was kind of strange. Motivation is stunted constantly. So there's multiple times in the story where she is just saying something so sudden and so off-key. It didn't really follow. She'd honestly be so quickly in love with somebody that it kind of gave the story no real way to go forward. Moravia's story and the villain's arc. So Moravia's story in the villain's arc specifically kind of annoyed me because I thought when we go down the villain's arc, because the whole point of her going with Moravia was to learn more about Moravia, but when you go and you get Hyuga or you get Yukonami, you don't even talk to her the whole time. I thought there'd be a little bit of story with her in each of their arcs, and I kind of thought that sucked that they pretty much glossed over it. It turned into like days passed, stuff went on, I became friends with them, but I didn't learn anything. And then all of the blooms, so all 4 of these stories felt almost identical. Every single one of them had very similar things happening to them. They even kind of broke it up into like groups of 2. Ayumu and Tokyo's stories, they both came from the research district. They both had ties to the research district. So for those reasons, their stories had very similar things. You just made it where Tokyo's parents were nice and Ayumu's parents were not nice, and they both hate their lives. And then for like Kamui and Mihaya, they both found out about their powers later in life, so they had what they thought was a normal childhood. And then tragedy. In fact, I think all of them, both of them are orphans. Both of them both the parents had died. And it was also due to the stuff happening. So it just felt very similar. I didn't really enjoy that. It got a little boring listening to the same story be rehashed with different characters. All the stories were one path with no diversions. I have played stories like this where you'll pick a story path and it'll splinter out and lead to a whole new story. None of these happened that way. They were all straight lines with like, there's one choice where you're gonna have a bad ending. Typically it's because you decided to do something really dumb. So the choice was usually very, very obvious. You chased after a kaiju when you shouldn't have. You went outside alone all these things like that. They weren't really giving you any different story content. It was more like, oh, I made a mistake. And that's a little boring. Another thing I considered bad was all the enemies were faceless. You don't have an enemy that stands out in this. There's the scientist, and he doesn't even have eyes. They just have him kind of like downcast. And then there's the other people, which they just come in and annihilate everybody. You never see their faces. You don't get really anything out of that. You don't have a bad guy. The advertisement for this showed what I thought was going to be a bad guy. I was waiting for this huge reveal that never happened, because every single buddy you meet in this game is nice. No one's bad. Like, they have bad parts of them, but overall, when you talk to them and get to know them, they're just normal people, and I didn't really enjoy that part of it. Another part I put under bad, but I also put what I like, is Liz. Liz's story, I appreciate them doing something so drastically different, where in one of her stories, she's dead for half of this game, and in the other one, she survives. But like, she just exists. They didn't give her much to do. She didn't have like a big reveal. We abandoned her half the game. I was actually surprised they gave this picture at the end, because they brushed her off, and she was a very big motivator in the game. The whole reason we have the bad arc is because she gets injured, and we decide we want to save her because she's our best friend. She's basically like a sister to us. We've known her our whole life. So like, we love Liz, but yet we didn't do a good job of portraying that. We rarely have her in scenes with the main character. She's pretty much there just to give advice to Yuki, and half the time that advice is still just as bad as like the uncle's advice. So I kind of didn't like that much. So there was that. And then we're gonna swap over to the things I like. So this is not like things I think overall are bad or good or things like that. It's things I personally enjoyed when playing this game. And one of them was Ibuki. Ibuki's story is one of my favorites. Total bias aside, I totally wanted to play his storyline the entire time, but they put the most thought into Ibuki's story. Most of the stories felt kind of, this is where we're headed, this is what's going to happen. Because they put the mystery arc into his story, I feel like way early, and all the motivations kind of lead you towards Ibuki. I feel like that made it very nice. I wish they had done something similar for everyone else, really. Nobody else had a story that felt quite like Ibuki's, and it was a little bit of a shame that he wasn't the last story I had to play through. Put a pin in that for just a second, because that's going to have a follow-up under the things I don't like. Again, things I do like, I like Liz. Liz is a great character. She's a fun character. She's a little bit different than your character, so she is the person that speaks up, the ones that's willing to shout. Kind of like, they built her up really, really well. So it's very disappointing that they kind of cast her aside shortly after that. I really wanted her to have more to do. And then, under things I like, I wrote the kaiju. Kaijus were cute. I love them. I don't know why they're called vectors in the subtitles, but you can hear them say kaiju and you know they're saying kaiju. I don't know if that's a copyright thing. I don't know. They're kaijus. I can see it. I appreciate them. I really wish they would have had more about them, more about saving them, but that kind of got pushed aside because of something under the things I don't like, which is Ro's story. Rose and my things I don't like, because his story is the most boring story of them all, and I feel like they just wanted to add a twist, and he was the whole twist, and it wasn't a good one. It was just revealed that there's another world outside, and Ro is from that world. He was sent here to research our world and determine if we deserve to still have a world. And we are, for some reason, infatuated with him way too fast. We meet him, we go outside, we suddenly say, I want to learn more about him. It just was so quick, which is where I come back to like the motivation is stunted constantly. Like, her motivation with going with Moravia was to learn from Moravia, but she gets led out there and suddenly she's obsessed with Ro. And I just didn't like Ro's story. It was really boring. Also, the joke they made about him possibly assaulting the character, something I didn't enjoy at all in this story. And the fact that she kind of went, oh, well, it could have been worse. It shouldn't have happened. That should have been like excluded entirely. They went too long with it, in my opinion. All right, let's see. Story constantly felt like it was repeating itself over and over again. It got to the point where I started skipping parts. I'll do this when I'm playing alone. I was trying to not do it as much since I wanted to have a very consistent storyline shown over my stream, but it got real repetitive. And the final arc, I literally skipped all of it, and I was thinking about replaying it today since I was tired last night. It was 2 a.m. I think when I stopped streaming. I was like, I gotta go to bed, my eyes are watering, but I don't want to. I'm pretty sure I got the gist of what was happening because they laid out everything over and over again through everyone's story. I learned everything already, and all that changed really was Masaki found me first and decided to save Liz, and because of that we get the good ending. And I think she still ends up with Ibuki in the good ending based on their overall conversations and how they were standing at the end, which is great. I appreciate that. They're a great couple. But like, all this story has been hashed out. Like, everything is in the know. And we fought a faceless monster once again because this game didn't have any enemies that you speak to, which again made it feel very kind of flat. It felt flat because we didn't have a bad guy. We had a faceless doctor. We had a faceless colony that created our colony. We could have done a lot more with that, and I kind of just felt bored. So I started fast forwarding. Every single storyline, when you do the good, bad, or happy ending, repeated the same thing. It's another thing about the trees being so short. Because they're so short, it repeats itself again really quickly. Whereas some of the games I played, like I said, the branch will go out and then it'll keep going for a while, and you'll have a completely different story. You'll meet completely different things, and it gives a bit of dynamic to your choices. Your choices, no matter what they are, you go to that next part of the story, you're still in that same situation. The dialogue doesn't change a lot. You're not experiencing anything differently. You guys still love each other at the end for some reason, even if you choose all the bad options. There's no part where it's like, I really didn't like this guy, he was giving me the creeps, and I don't fall in love with him. It never happened. So I kind of thought that was also just a kind of boring. Things I don't like. Anytime a character is abusive in a game, I just don't care anymore about that character, which is a shame, because Hyuga's story is the only story I almost feel like it kind of makes sense. He doesn't like humans. He hurts you because he doesn't care. Sure. Yukonami is straight up abusive, to the point where I don't know why the character wouldn't decide to try and get as far away from Yukonami constantly. Instead, she changes her mind halfway through it. It's terrible. I hate Yukonami's story because he's constantly bad and he's constantly childish. It was just really bad, in my opinion. I didn't enjoy his story at all. I didn't enjoy the abuse they decided to make seem almost normal. Ayumu's story has mild like agitation, but if you're using your actual powers in the middle of a battle to fight someone because you don't like that they talk to your sister, don't date them. Like, don't. There's no redeeming qualities to that. There's no I'm being standoffish, but I had a bad childhood story that's gonna make me feel bad enough for that person. I didn't like him. I liked his sister. We couldn't date his sister though. So then I have Ro on here. Ro shoots you. You die because of Ro. Ro shoots you with a gun and you are dead. Just dead. You'll never come back from that. And that sucks. Ibuki also hurts you, which is also a little bit of a shame, but he doesn't actually hurt you. It's described when it looks like he's hitting you that he's throwing stuff around you. But you do end up covered in scratches at one point because he throws stuff directly at you. So unfortunately, even my favorite character falls to the characters that will hurt you subplot, which just is kind of disappointing because he was really cool. And I get he was also upset. There's another thing too, but when you use your emotions and you become bad, you're still bad. So that's 5 out of 8 characters that I remember being hostile towards your character. Tokyo didn't really get hostile. He was kind of nonchalant the whole time. Uh, Kamui is like the sweetest person ever. And Mahaya doesn't really need to hurt you because his character is pretty much in sync with you the whole time. You guys are never really at odds with each other. So those are kind of my final thoughts on the whole thing. I don't know if I'd say this is like top tier story. I would give it about a 5 overall, which feels about right because I don't like it, but I don't think it deserves a 6, but I don't think it deserves a 4. So 5 feels right, somewhere in the middle. I like the characters. I like the stuff. I actually just realized I forgot to put this in the things I don't like. I don't like that her parents never had a face or a picture or anything for her. It just again felt like they threw that story in there and didn't really give it much thought because they were focused more on these kind of boring love story aspect of it. Everyone was revealed within like the first 2 chapters. If they were a magical girl, you found out they were a magical girl. They didn't hold on to that very long. They didn't give you suspense. You also typically learned about someone else being a magical girl in that storyline, and that's fine, but then you rehash it when you go through the other person's storyline as well. So it gets repeated quite a bit. So it's not too fun for those reasons. So I feel like 5's fair. If you have 5 out of your 8 characters willing to hurt your main character, that's not too great. For giving bad advice to someone, also not too great. Not giving the actual story that should matter the most to your character a face. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, my parents had a name. The fact she didn't know her parents had names is another wild thing. And I get maybe it's for the protection part of it, but there's a lot she didn't know about herself, and they just kind of glossed over that whole thing. And I didn't enjoy that. So it could have been more enjoyable. They could have added more to this. They could have gave these guys more motivation. They could have not made their histories exactly the same. One of them could have been inherently bad, but instead every single one of them had redeeming qualities. We could have had a bad guy that straight up was bad. Rose not bad. You can't tell me Rose bad. Who's straight up bad the whole time, not considerate, and takes you on a completely divergent path through this entire game. I would have loved that. I would have loved to see the other world entirely and understand more from that side of it. I would have loved if Ibuki had done something crazy and wild, but his story was pretty straightforward. Like, I enjoy that he could constantly just destroy the world based on your words, which is another reason why I like Ibuki's character. But that doesn't really lead to the most amazing ending. It was so short-lived. So I would say 5's fair. Ibuki's my favorite. I would say that Yukonami and Ro are tied for least favorite. Ro might be even worse to me than Yukonami just because his story was so boring. They wanted a twist. They gave us a really bad twist in the process. But overall, I enjoyed playing through the game. I feel like I personally have been playing by myself without streaming. I would have fast forwarded quite a bit more just to get to the next plot point. I muted the characters a couple times just so I could read through it because there were so many big chunks of just here's the story, and then the next story you play, it does it again. So maybe more flashbacks, more pictures in the flashbacks, actually having an enemy. I might have enjoyed this better. If there was a plot line that led somewhere entirely different, I would have loved it. I also had one last note that I totally forgot to put in my checklist. I didn't like that the story changed so drastically in some parts. I love when the story you can feel like the overlap. In Tokyo's story, they go to a different colony. If in everybody else's story at some point Tokyo left and went with one of the other 3 guys, I would have loved that. In Kamui's story, he starts doing broadcasting. He has to broadcast every single week to tell people about kaiju attacks. That doesn't happen in any other storyline, and it's such a small detail that could easily be worked in. He doesn't get exhausted like he does in your storyline because he still has his powers. It could have happened and it would have been great. In Mahaya's story, he's doing research. He's trying to figure out what happened to his parents. He could have done that in every other story. They could have mentioned it multiple times. Ahumu's sister could have bumped into you in any other storyline at least once. just to introduce the fact that she does exist, and instead you only see her when you play through his story. That's it. That's the only time you see her. She's not in anything else. She doesn't speak or say much outside of the little bubble they stuck her in. That also adds me to Kamui's story. His grandfather could have popped up at some point in any other story, just briefly, just to remind you that he existed. That'd been great. That kind of goes same in par with the fact that when you choose the villain's arc, you are following Moravia. You're like, hey girl, talk to me. And instead, if you go through this, you hang out with Ro the whole time, you hang with Hyuga the whole time, you hang out with Yuganami the whole time. I like romance stories, but I hate stories that make it seem like everything else doesn't exist except for this romance. And it made it kind of boring. I felt like each one of these stories should have gave you just a snippet of Moravia in a special light, something new that you hadn't heard before. And instead, in Ro's story, she straight up goes, I'm Ibuki. She doesn't do that in any other story but that one, and that's the final story. So little things here and there could have definitely made this more enjoyable. I also felt like it was crazy that we rehashed the entire story in the grand finale, given the fact that the grand finale is after you've played through every single storyline. You have to play through all 8 storylines to get the grand finale. So rehashing every little bit is so much reading. It's so much to do. I already saw this once. I don't need to see it again. It doesn't need to be this much. And I feel like maybe that's a downfall, because every story took about, on average, 2.5 hours. Some took more. I'd say most of them took a little bit more than that. Actually, I lied. Okay, 3 hours. 3 hours is the average to get through the main story. And then I would take another hour maybe going through the different side stories and unlocking those. If they had a ton of exposition, it was going to take a lot longer. So, and then we go through the final story. I just started skipping because everything was just being rehashed. I knew who everybody was. I knew Ibuki's role. I knew who my parents were. I knew who Ro was. I didn't need this information anymore because I knew it already. And I feel like they could have easily broke that down without making that such a long scene. And you still would have enjoyed it just as much and maybe felt even more filled up about it at the very end. So, final thoughts. Yay! So yeah, this is a 5. I'd say 5 out of 10. Like the art, like the characters, some of them more than others. Overall, the story was interesting, but too repetitive. Not enough divergent in the story to give me a reason to play again and again and again. Repeating itself way too much, given the fact that they wrote this story, they should know how they're going to create it. Rehashing so much stuff again and again right after another, it gets a little boring. All the main characters having very similar stories, a little boring. So 5 I'd say is safe. It's an interesting story. I would say unless you're a completionist and you want to have all those little check marks and every single photo unlocked, play through the stories maybe once, try to get the happy ending if you really want to. That's usually what my goal is, always the happy ending, because you usually have a better ending that way. Sure. I don't know if it's worth it playing through every single one of their stories again and again and again to get all the different endings and all the flowcharts, because not very much of it changed and it ends up getting repeated multiple times. So, but we'll see. I have another one of these games coming soon. It's called Lover Pretend. I don't remember the date it's out, so that'll probably be the next one this style that I end up playing, unless I start breaking out some of the old ones that I haven't played in a while. This one definitely had Amnesia vibes to it, as well as a mix of Nor 9, just because of all the I could end up killing you vibes. We'll see how Lover Pretend goes. It sounds like it was going to be a much more straightforward story, which another thing, I don't like to see too much of the story because I like to be surprised. So I could be extremely surprised, like I was with this one. But have a great rest of your day, guys. Bye-bye.